What's up YouTube, 72 Fins 1, bringing some more upgrades to my truck trailer here. Now, last time I put a bed liner in this thing, and I was going to take some of the cut piece of bed liner, using the cover over the old wheel wells here. But, after looking at how beat up these things are, got a whole lot of dents and use and no smooth surfaces, it had to come to the conclusion that I'm not going to be able to cut pieces of bed liner and put them on here because there's no flat surfaces. The passenger side one's pretty beat up thanks to years of hard use and getting beat up. So same goes for the driver's side right here. You can see where it's all beat up and dented and whatnot. So now we're going to take those out and we're going to replace them with these, some better looking wheel wells that I bought from a guy who's helped me out with a lot of parts for these things. And so as you can see, they're got some rust on them, but they have a lot less dents and stuff. So for $25, it's a good deal when you pay $100 out of a catalog for brand new ones, $50 out to salvage or used. It was a really good deal. Now, what Chevy did on these old beds was everything was made to bolt apart, like your bedside, your wheel wells, and your front panel. And what they did was they took this square hole right here, and there's a special kind of bolt that's squared and goes through that hole, the wheel on the end of the floor. There's a flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut that goes on the bottom that holds them in. Now you got 1, 2, 3 of them on each side, so 6 on each side. And you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on in the middle here, so that makes 11, which makes 22 bolts total where the wheel wells bolt down to the floor. So just a little bit of walk around. Now yeah, they're a different color, but for the price I paid, they're really good. Now the other thing is, on the inside the bedside, the wheel wells bolt up to it through some holes right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So now what it does is, I've taken the wheels off to get those 7 bolts on the inside of the bedside where the wheel well bolts up to it. I got a 1-ton axle, and 3/4 and 1-ton axles have 8 lug nuts a piece on them. Then we're taking those off with a lug wrench and a jack and put some jack stands underneath both sides of the trailer. So that's the first rule working on any vehicles. You want to have it safely supported so it can't come off and cause injury or anything like that. So now, as you can see here, right about there where my finger is, right there is the bolt that goes from the wheel well into the bedside. And right here is pretty much what the wheel well looks like. Where the wheel sits, that's the part of the wheel well. And right here is, see if I can get a good shot of one of them. Okay, sorry. Give me a second here. Right. Oh, come on. Really? One of these right here. It's where the washer and the lock washer and the nut all go onto the bolt that goes through the wheel well and through the floor. So, gotta remove all those on each side, and all 22 of those for each one, and then the other ones I showed you. Now to get to those, I had to go off and remove the bed side. I mean the bed liner, sorry. Now, also had to take out the replacement floor, which I'm showing you right now. This piece right here is what goes from the front of the driver's side wheel well to the front, covers the front corner, from the middle to the front of the driver's side wheel well. Now this piece goes to the that I'm aiming at right here. It goes to the front of the driver's side wheel well all the way to the back where the tailgate goes. Now this big long piece right there goes from the front to the back of the passenger side on the middle. Now if that's not the best view, I do apologize. But anyways, those are overlapped and welded. They're just pieces of flat plate steel. Here's the original floor, and you can see it's got quite a few holes and dents and rust, and well, a ton of rust. And you can see right there where the water's pooled. What happens when you overload a truck bed is it tends to push down on it in between the bed beams, and it makes craters, valleys, so that wears out your bed. Now this one's pretty bad. It's got all the holes and rust and whatnot to it. So now what Chevy did on these old ones was everything bolted together, like for the bedside, like right there, right there, there, and one covered in mud where the bedside bolts to the floor from the front of the bed to the front of the wheel well. Now you got your wheel well bolts right here, as I mentioned earlier, and you got 1, 2, 3, and 4 going back there. So, but we're not worried about that for right now. What we need to do is we need to take a grinder and we need to grind these heads off so the nuts and bolts fall through, because they're all pretty well rusted in there and it's not even worth trying to take a wrench to them. So, but to get those off, this piece of metal right here goes over the wheel well. It's got to come out. Machine's gonna have to grind off where it's welded to the bedside, so it can come out, and then I'll have to have it welded in later. Now the same goes for this one right here, which I'm pointing at, to get the passenger side one out, and also on this big white piece right here on the driver's side. Let's cut it all out to be able to cut all the bolts off and get everything off like it should. So anyways, I'm going to stop the video for now. It's up YouTube, so YouTube Fins 1, bringing another video clip of installing some new wheel wells into my truck trailer. Now, last time, first video clip, we had a white piece, namely this piece, going like that. Had a few spots that were welded up on the bedside here. We were in the way of putting the wheel on, so took the grinder, sorry about the noise, and we cut them out. So just a little bit of rust right there is why that was in there. So this whole area behind here might need to be patch down the line, but for right now, it's not what we're worried about. Now, there's the old wheel well from the driver's side. Old dang beat up piece of junk where she took out of here. As you can see, it took a little bit of finessing to pop the bolts off, pop it away from the bolts in the floor in some spots. Now you can see where we had to take the grinder, like right here. Just grind on the heads and flatten them off, and then take a hammer and a chisel to pry them up off the floor. Then pound the rest of the bolt and the lock washer and the washer and the nut through the floor, so we had the holes. So you can tell where that happened right there. Pretty much on every bolt where I had to take off, where some metal had to go down, so I can knock these suckers through. Now, this is the hammer and the chisel that we used. Pretty much got in between the wheel well and the bed and pounded up on it so it came up a little bit. Now, this is what I used right here to grind these suckers off with. See how that grinding gets nice and thick? They make thick ones and they make thin ones for metal. So you pretty much just put it on top of the bolt head and you grind it down, is what we're doing in this case. And it also works for grinding off the weld beads to be able to take out the replacement floor and the piece of metal I need to take out. Now, this is what is left of one of the bolts I ground out. You can see how there's not much you can tell. There, now you can see that there's a washer, a lock washer, and there's a nut. That's a little better angle of how you can see the lock washer. This is the thin piece between this part right here and the nut right there. And there's 11 of them, like I said earlier, so it took a little bit of grinding, a little bit of work with the hammer and chisel to get them off. Now, here's what we got done. Ta-da! We got one of the wheel wells in place. So, difference in color really shows up, but looks a lot better than this thing did. And I can use it for the bed liner like I want to. Now you can see where I substituted the bolts. Just some regular old bolts from the hardware store instead of getting the exact replacements, but they'll work just fine. A couple spots of metal on the floor here where I had to take up the old wheel well. So, 11 of those. Now there's a dent right there. I'm going to see if I can have pounded out. And one right there. So, I'm going to see if I can have those knocked out. Otherwise, sucker doesn't look too bad. Now, so we got all 11 bolts going through there. I have to level the floor up a little bit because of the cratering in the bed. So, last thing that's going to be shown in this part right here is how the bolts go through the wheel well and the floor, and they come down. Now, that right there is pretty much a nut with the lock washer, and then the flat washer. I'm just gonna have to get some help here and have somebody holding the bolts from the top while we tighten them up from the bottom, or whatever will work. But I got the tools to do it, so it shouldn't be no problem. So we'll do is sand the other 10 bolts. Not about the 7 bolts. We go from the inner part of the bedside to the wheel well. I don't know about those yet, so that might be something for another time. But I think 11 will hold it good for now. So that's half of this. Making some progress on this thing. I wouldn't say about half yet, because it's when it's fully installed, and we still got to take the passenger side one out here. So anyways, that's gonna do it for this episode.